At 98, I began holding the wall at night. Not because I had fallen, not because anyone had warned me to. My hand simply reached for it before I understood why. It was a little after 2 in the morning. I had gotten out of bed to use the bathroom when my legs began to shake beneath me. Not violently, just enough that I slowed down. Just enough that my hand found the wall before my mind admitted I was afraid. I stood there in the dark and thought, when did I stop trusting my own legs? My name is Frank Delaney. I am 98 years old, and I still live alone in a small house in Ohio. That night frightened me because I knew what it could become. Not one bad step. A life arranged around weak legs. And for years, I had believed I was doing enough to stop that from happening. I thought walking was enough. I walked to the mailbox. I walked the aisles at the grocery store with a cart in front of me. When the weather was decent, I made one slow circle around the block and counted it as a good day. Walking kept me moving. I will give it that. But it did not give back the strength I had been losing. I noticed it in the small moments. A low chair required both hands. Stepping off a curb made my knees hesitate. Climbing into my truck meant lifting one leg with more effort than I wanted anybody to see. Later, I came across a 12-week study of 312 adults over 65. One group walked each day. The other practiced simple movements lying on a bed. The group doing the bed work gained 38% more leg strength than the walkers. That stopped me cold. My trouble was not that I had stopped moving. My trouble was that my thighs, hips, and calves were no longer being asked to work hard enough to wake up. Walking had kept my weak legs busy. It had not been teaching them to become strong again. I did not need a gym full of machines. I did not need to prove anything to anybody. I needed to make my legs work on purpose somewhere I felt safe enough to begin. That place was my bed. And the first movement looked so simple that I nearly laughed when I heard its name. Ankle pumps. I used to think of my ankles as the end of my legs, nothing more. But when you sit or lie down for too long, the calves stop doing one of their quiet jobs, helping move blood back up from the lower legs. That is why legs can begin to feel heavy, stiff, tingly, or slow by the end of the day. A 2018 vascular study found that 30 ankle pumps done 3 times a day improved lower leg circulation by 67% in adults over 70. I did not need a laboratory to understand the idea. I could feel that my legs had spent too many hours doing nothing. I lay flat on my back with both legs stretched out. A small pillow under the knees is fine if it makes the position easier. Then I pointed my toes away from me and held them there for 2 seconds. After that, I pulled my toes back toward my face and held for another 2 seconds. That was 1 repetition. I did 15 to 20 of them at a time, morning, afternoon, and before bed. Slow was the whole point. When I rushed, it became nothing but a little flick of the feet. When I moved slowly and squeezed my calves as I pointed, I could feel the work. There were 3 mistakes I had to stop making. I could not point my toes and forget to pull them back. I could not hold my breath, and I could not rush because I wanted to get it over with. Within days, my feet felt warmer. My legs felt less like they had been left behind in a chair all afternoon. But warming the legs up was only the beginning. I still had to teach them how to bend and pull again. The next movement was the heel slide. This one mattered to me because weakness does not only show up when you are walking. It shows up when you try to bring a leg into a truck, when you pull yourself around in bed, when you rise from a chair, or when you take that first step toward a stair. Heel slides work the muscles around the hips and knees together. In a 2020 study of 180 adults between 68 and 84 who could not rise from a chair without their arms, 79% could stand without help after 8 weeks of daily heel slide work. I began lying flat with both legs straight and my arms resting at my sides. Socks or smooth pajama bottoms made it easier for my heel to glide. Sometimes I put a small towel beneath my heel. Then I chose my stronger leg first. Keeping my heel in contact with the mattress, I slid it slowly toward my buttocks. I did not lift the foot. I brought it as close as I comfortably could, paused for 3 seconds, then slid it back down. 10 to 12 repetitions on one side, then the other side. 2 sets, once or twice a day. The mistakes were easy to make. If the heel lifted, I had changed the exercise. If I rushed, momentum did the work instead of my leg. And when I forgot to breathe out as the heel came toward me, my lower back tightened for no good reason. What helped most was tightening the front of my thigh as I slid. I imagined drawing my kneecap gently toward my hip. After a while, I stopped feeling as though my leg had to be dragged through every bend. Then I found the movement that made the front of my thighs speak up for themselves. That movement was the straight leg raise. By then I understood that my thighs had become part of the problem. The quadriceps on the front of the leg do more than make a man look strong. They help you stand, walk steady the knee, and keep the legs from folding beneath you on a stair. A University of Pittsburgh study in 2019 followed 96 older adults with knee weakness. After 12 weeks of straight leg raises for only 5 minutes a day, their quadriceps strength rose 41% and their walking speed improved 28%. I lay on my back with both legs stretched out. Then I bent one knee and put that foot flat on the mattress. That bent leg gave my back some support. The other leg stayed straight. Before lifting it, I tightened the muscle on top of the straight thigh, as though I were pulling the kneecap toward my hip. Then I slowly lifted the leg about 12 inches from the bed, held it for 5 seconds, and lowered it over 3 or 4 seconds. 8 to 10 repetitions. Then I switched sides. 2 sets per leg, once a day to begin. I had to watch for 3 things. I could not let the lifted knee bend. I did not need to lift the leg high enough to show off. And I could not swing it upward with momentum. When the 5-second hold felt long, I counted aloud. It kept me breathing. I also pressed my lower back gently into the mattress. Over time, I noticed something I had missed for years. My knees did not feel as surprised by every step down, but strong thighs were not the whole answer. The muscles behind my hips had been sleeping too. The 4th movement was the glute bridge. Nobody told me at first that the muscles in the buttocks could decide how old a man feels when he stands up. But they are the engine behind the hips. When they grow weak, the knees and lower back try to carry work that does not belong to them. A 2022 study in the Journal of Geriatric Physical Therapy followed 240 adults over 70 who were considered at risk of falling. After 10 weeks of glute bridges 3 times a week, their fall rate dropped 54% and hip strength rose 33%. I lay on my back with both knees bent and both feet flat on the mattress, about hip-width apart. My heels sat roughly 6 inches from my buttocks. My arms rested by my sides. Then I pressed through my heels, squeezed my buttocks and raised my hips slowly. I was not trying to arch high into the air. I was trying to make one straight line from my knees to my shoulders. I held that position for 5 seconds, then lowered myself back down over another 3 or 4 seconds. 10 to 12 repetitions made 1 set. I did 2 sets once a day. The form mattered. When I pushed with my lower back instead of squeezing my buttocks first, I felt it immediately. When my knees opened too wide or fell inward, the movement lost its shape. And I had to remember to breathe out as I lifted, then breathe in as I lowered. At the top, I gave my buttocks one extra squeeze before coming down. That small effort changed how I felt getting up from the toilet and standing at the counter. But the movement I returned to most was even quieter than this one. The last exercise was the one I wish I had known about years earlier. The quad set. It does not look like much. You are lying down, your leg barely moves. But that is because it is an isometric exercise. The work happens inside the thigh while the knee stays still. A 2021 study in the European Journal of Applied Physiology compared 156 older adults with weak legs. One group walked for 30 minutes a day over 8 weeks. The other did 10 minutes of quad sets each day. The quad set group gained 47% more quadriceps strength. Their walking speed improved 31%, compared with 9% in the walking group. One report described the strength gain as comparable to what walking 2,500 times farther could produce. I do not know how to make a sentence like that sound less surprising. I only know it made me stop dismissing a movement just because it looked small. I lay flat with both legs straight. A rolled towel under the knee can make the position more comfortable, but I did not always use one. I worked one leg at a time. I started with my right leg. I pressed the back of my knee firmly down into the mattress, as though I were trying to flatten something underneath it. At the same time, I tightened the big muscle on the front of my thigh. I held the squeeze for 10 seconds. Then I fully relaxed for 5. I did 10 contractions on the right leg, switched to the left, and worked up to 2 sets per leg twice a day. The mistakes were not dramatic, but they mattered. A half-hearted press gave me a half-hearted contraction. Letting go after 2 or 3 seconds skipped the deepest part of the work. Doing both legs together divided my attention. And failing to rest between repetitions made the next squeeze weaker. Sometimes I pulled my toes toward my face while pressing the knee down. It gave my shin and calf something to do as well. Counting aloud helped because I could not hold my breath and count at the same time. This was the exercise I did on days when I did not feel brave enough for much else. And after a few weeks, the changes began showing up far beyond my bed. I will not tell you I became young again. I did not. My knees still spoke to me on cold mornings. I still moved carefully in the dark. I still had days when I chose the chair with arms, but I stopped reaching for the wall before I needed it. Standing up from the toilet did not feel like a private test of whether I would make it. I could get out of my favorite chair with less pushing from my hands. When I stepped down from the curb at the grocery store, I felt my legs answer instead of simply hoping they would. The mailbox was still at the end of the drive. The hallway was still dark at 2 a.m. Nothing around me had changed. What changed was the conversation between my mind and my legs. I had stopped asking them to survive weakness without help. I was giving them small, deliberate work every day. The ankles, the knees, the thighs, the hips. Not for an audience. Not to impress a doctor, a neighbor, or my children. I did it because each little improvement made my house feel like mine again. So those are the 5 movements I started with in bed. Ankle pumps to wake the lower legs up. Heel slides to teach the hips and knees to bend and pull. Straight leg raises to strengthen the front of the thighs. Glute bridges to bring the hips and buttocks back into the work. And quad sets to make the muscles above the knee contract with real purpose again. Do not wait for a perfect morning or a burst of motivation. Pick one. Do it slowly. Then come back tomorrow. At 98, I do not exercise because I expect to outrun age. I do it because I want to stand up from my own chair. I want to walk through my own hallway without letting fear arrive before I do. I want to keep making breakfast, bringing in the mail, and deciding what I will do with an ordinary afternoon. I did not need younger legs. I needed trustworthy ones. If this kind of honest talk about staying strong, steady, and independent matters to you, subscribe to the Senior Body. This is where we share practical senior health stories for people who want to keep living their own lives. Which movement are you going to try first tonight? Tell me in the comments. And tell me your age. Someone else may be sitting in the dark wondering when they stopped trusting their own legs.